Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Caleb Teskey, and today I am joined by Jesse and Shane Mcfarlin from Old Growth Vermont, guys. Thanks for being here, man. We've been trying to set this up for quite a number of months here. I'm glad to finally have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for your patience and understanding the grind.
Because it has.
Well, we're all busy out here for sure. And I know I caught you guys right in the middle of kind of harvest season, so I'm glad we're on the back end of that. Would you guys mind each doing a 5-minute life story? This gets a little weird with multiple guests because you kind of have to sit there and listen, but I'd love to hear a 5-minute life story from you guys.
Life story, just like where we've come from, how we got
Yeah,
here.
the basics before we get into anything serious.
All right. So I am newly Jessica Mcfarlin. Usually go by Jesse. I'm from Maine. I spent 20 years in Maine. I was in social work, addiction recovery.
Oh, no shit.
Through COVID. Yeah. So all through COVID, I worked most days, most hours, and I got burnt out real quick, overworked and underappreciated. And I met Shane during this time. So it was pretty quick that I was ready to take the opportunity to go after my dreams and to recognize, I think COVID did that for a lot of us, of recognizing, okay, any changes I want to make in my life, the time is now, and that was definitely my experience.
Yeah.
Regarding cannabis, I used cannabis since, I don't know, probably 14. And it had a significant role in my spiritual life. I think was the biggest thing with cannabis. Spirituality has always been really important to me. And it just really helped me to explore different spiritual aspects of life and help me to see life from a new lens, in a way that I wasn't raised necessarily to see. Really, I guess, the living interconnectedness of everything. I was raised in such a way that was very much to present a certain way, and that can really bog down a person's ability to see the interconnectedness of life. And that really helped me in my younger years. And yeah, what else to say about me? I hiked the Long Trail a couple years ago.
Oh shit.
Or most of it. And that was when I realized that I belonged in Vermont. Because up to that point, I was originally born in Illinois and spent the first 10 years in Illinois. So I was under the impression that Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine were pretty much all the same.
Yeah, well, Maine's kind of like Vermont with just fewer people and more spread out.
Right. Less mountains and less streams, and
Sure.
It's a lot flatter.
Yeah.
So when I took the Long Trail, I realized that I belong in Vermont and that I've always belonged in Vermont. And then I met Shane, and he was an 8th generation Vermonter. So then it sealed the deal.
Okay,
So
maybe
that's pretty much it about me, I think, for the basics, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seems like a good time to throw Shane in there. Yeah, go for it, man.
So yeah, I mean, I've as she said, my family's been here for generations. I believe I'm the 8th, meaning my niece and nephew are the 9th, which is crazy talk. Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in Vermont, went to high school in Woodstock, grew up in a town called Brownsville, which is where the farm currently is.
It's up your neck, isn't it? Up near Willoughby, somewhere up there.
No. Brownsville's down by Windsor.
I'm thinking of Brownington. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, we're down near Windsor, Woodstock, that neck of the woods. So I grew up, small town, very small. Brownsville's got 800 people in it or something of that nature. So I just had to get out into the world. So I took off from Vermont, pretty young, exploring to New Mexico, Colorado, following Members of the Dead around, and various other festival circuits, ski bumming, and usually had a lot to do with cannabis. In different points of my life, different aspects of cannabis itself. But nonetheless, did that for some years. Ended up in California. For about a decade. I was in the Santa Cruz Mountains there, which was great. Ended up coming back to the East Coast to get sober. Went to Maine to get into recovery, which was a phenomenal move. And ended up in Maine for I think 3 years. I met Jesse along that way, and I had been doing. I've grown for a big portion of my adult life, but when I was in Maine, I was back to doing carpentry. And then COVID hit, and it was, what better time to get back into doing what it is I do.
Yeah, the lumber prices went fucking.
Yeah.
Dude, they fucking skyrocketed.
Don't we know it?
And I mean, I don't know. I'm not good at sitting still. Let's be real with that. So basically what happened is we took a small break from working, doing carpentry. And by the time, it picked back up again, I, had made different plans.
Well, like as someone who has also had my own kind of recovery issues, like I feel like keeping busy is really like the one thing that helps me keep my mind out of those kind of patterns.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I am an addict in every form. I'm sober now, but I do go after things.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, and having met Jesse there, and we started a business in the medical market in Maine for a bit there, and
no shit.
It was just time to come back to Vermont. Realistically, once I had been in Maine for 3 years, I was like, wait a minute, why am I not home? You know what I mean? And it served its purpose for sure. I mean, we found each other. Got some years under my belt, but it was good to get home. So that leads here.
Yeah, and I'd love to. I would love to ask you about sort of starting a business in Maine, man. Maybe before we dig into the Vermont stuff, you could tell us about that a little bit, because I was unaware of that, but that sounds curious. And I've been studying their market a little bit, and it looks like a bit of the Wild West up there.
It is. It's hectic. It's also it like I kind of associate it with, to speak in metaphor, it'd be like entering the workforce during late stage capitalism. Like we jumped into the Maine medical market in a time when it's, already been established for a very long time. And it's, I don't really like the word cutthroat, but it really does describe, because everyone's fighting for their survival. Everyone has to, there's so many growers, like thousands and thousands, permanent growers there.
I've read their master list of growers. It was wild. They had like, at one point also, they had more retailers licensed than growers too, which I also found astonishing.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, I look at that was my internship. Because I entered into this very naively. I was at a point in my life that I knew I needed to make a change. And what I wanted to do was own our own house outright, so that we had a sense of security in this world where nothing is actually your own, even your land, your house. And I wanted to find a way around that, because I just had enough after COVID and dealing with a lot of trauma related to COVID and the way people's behaviors changed as a result of that. So it really gave me this deep desire to be rooted. And my temperament is as such that I can dive into most things and make them work and be decently good at them pretty quickly. And so I was like, this cannabis is what you do. I respect the shit out of the plant. I love hard labor. We're going for it. And I think like a lot of us entering into the regulated market, you enter into it pretty naively, and we certainly did. And Maine was, oh my gosh, it was so much hard work.
Did you guys build out your own facility up there, or what was your business that you were running, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so we did a small one just on our property that we were renting. So we did 60 plants outdoor.
Okay, cultivation.
Oh yeah, cultivation. Yep, we did indoor and outdoor.
Okay,
and,
cool.
Yeah, and so we learned a lot through that, and what it means to be in the regulated market. And
how did it go?
Very little reward.
Yeah,
It was difficult. It was one of those, like I said, it's, so the reason, to quote what you said about at one point, there was as many retailers as cultivators. And the reason for that being is there's no statute written anywhere that a town can max out of retailers. So there's that. But B, it's because that's how they had to sell their weed. There became so many growers that unless you opened a retail, you couldn't sell your product. Realistically. So people were, they were popping up all over the place. So it was difficult to distribute product. Now I came from California prior to that, where I was part of, I was part of the medical program there, as well as other things. And it was an entirely different monster.
Part of the program as a patient or as part of the industry?
As a cultivator.
Cool. Oh,
as well as a patient and a cultivator.
Can we hear about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, 100%. California.
That'd be great, dude.
Now talking Wild West. California is more. I mean, I certainly see that, and Maine's getting there. I hear black market prices every once in a while from Maine, and it worries me. But yeah, California. I mean, California was great. It's the fact of the matter is, I was part of the medical program as a cultivator. I carried a medical marijuana card there. It's a little different than Vermont, especially to get into the medical.
You can grow like 99 plants, is that right? Out in Cali?
Yeah. So per medical card, you can grow 99 plants. And my friends taught me a bunch of great things. What it kind of looks like is if you're willing to sit on a hill for a very long time and you have a strong work ethic, you're fucking hired. You know what I mean? Realistically. So that's what got me into it. And I mean, I loved it immediately. And I'd been part of the cannabis industry in one way or another since way prior to moving to California. But, it was great. It also led to addiction and various other things, but at the same time, I learned an immense wealth of knowledge and life experience from sitting on a mountaintop in a yurt, growing some massive plants.
And so when you're a registered caretaker, you've got 99 plants. What's the deal? You're allowed to give it to medical patients. Can you sell it to a medical dispensary?
When I was there, you could sell it to a medical dispensary. I'm not comfortable being quoted on what it's like now.
Sure,
I moved back some years ago, but at the time, it was, and towards, about halfway through my experience there was when you started having to actually make appointments with the dispensaries, and you needed, an LLC and all these things. It was the Wild West for a while. You know what I mean? You just walk into a dispensary and, but that being said, I certainly learned a wealth of knowledge. I was very lucky when I first got put on a job there to essentially got told to read Teaming with Microbes and got given a compost tea recipe and, got sent up to a yurt, and here fast forward 15 years or whatever it is. And I'm here in Vermont able to do what I love for a living with my new wife and my dad. So, I mean, like, it certainly did everything it could have done for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. And now before we get into your company, Jesse, you made some comments about sort of your social equity status. And I was wondering if we could dig into that story a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were granted a social equity license based on the fact that my biological father was imprisoned for cannabis they charged him for 11 and a half years and he served 5.5. So that granted us social equity and has been a really interesting and fulfilling part of my life now. It has opened up this part of my life that I have never dived into before with my father, because I was his younger daughter and it wasn't something that he talked a lot about. So now that I'm a cultivator, it has really opened up this opportunity to really dive into that with my father. And I spoke with him before the interview, anticipating that it might get brought up.
Yeah, which was super nice of you to do, by the way. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was, we talked at length about a lot of details that I hadn't asked him about before, because I knew it made him uncomfortable.
Oh.
And at this point, now that I'm cultivating and have taken this path myself, it all came out, and he was happy to let me share any details if you know.
Well, yeah, I'd love to hear the whole story, because we talked about this on the phone and it sounded like a wild. I'm gonna let you tell it, but yeah, it certainly caught my attention.
Yep. So I had just heard it for the whole story, for the first time recently. So hopefully I do it justice and get what details correct that I can. So my father is a veteran. He was in the Army in Desert Storm. He served a couple of tours, and during his last tour, he was in an explosion and ended up in the burn unit for, I think, like at least 6 months or something. And when he was discharged, they had lost all record of him being in the Army.
Wow.
So he couldn't get any treatment beyond that. He kept going into the VA and they couldn't find anything on him. And this lasted for 20 years before they found his records.
They found him.
Yeah, they did. So it was 20 years. So when he got out of the burn unit, he didn't have anywhere to turn. So he started using cannabis to treat his pain, and his buddies were cultivators. And this was in Illinois. And so he ended up getting into cultivation. And then I think one of his, well, never mind, actually, I won't go into those details, but somewhere around 2012, I think it was, what does that make me? No, 2002, I feel like I was 12, maybe 2002. Yeah, 2002.
I'm not great at timelines either.
Yeah, so I'm like, what is time? What's today? I don't
exactly.
So it doesn't matter. But at one point when they were growing, they were cutting down a bunch of males, bagging them up and lugging them out so the pollen wouldn't spread in one of the plots that they had. And a game warden came upon them, found the males, and they charged him. And I don't know what he got charged with at that point, but he just didn't address it. And it was kind of neither here nor there from what I gathered. And then within a year, he was driving home from my grandfather's house, and he had, I think, 3/4 of a pound on him or something, which he, was nothing, and something I think he probably carried pretty often just for head. And he ran out of gas. So a cop came and brought him into town. They got gas. They came back. He didn't have a funnel to pour the gas in, so he opened up the back door to get a magazine, and there was his handgun sitting there, which he legally owned and possessed. And the cops saw it and freaked out. And so then from there, he got arrested. They found 3/4 of a pound, and ended up using that as an opportunity to search his home, found his seedling trays.
So they raided the house based off that probable cause or whatever.
Or searched. I don't know the difference between raided and searched, but yeah.
Is that what they call it? A surge?
Right. I feel like raided is like if you
It's a home invasion is what it is. It's an armed home invasion.
I think it's called an armed robbery. I think, but
so
yeah, if anybody else did that, it would certainly be an armed home invasion. I don't know. Apparently the cops can do that, but yeah.
Then it really blew up from that point, because he had this charge from them finding the males, so they knew he was cultivating, carrying, 3/4 of a pound, found the seedling trays, and they were putting all this together where they thought they had this like huge thing. So in Illinois at this time, if you had even a joint and a knife, it was the highest felony. I think it was called felony X or something in Illinois.
Wow.
And then you get aggravated assault.
Just with a knife?
Yeah, just with the knife and something like a joint even, So he had a firearm, which he could legally own and possess.
Sure.
Of a pound, and they just threw the book at him. So I think, he ended up in the hospital after his arrest. I think they had like 14 guys on him, beat the shit out of him.
Wow.
He ended up in the hospital from it. And because, they wanted to know who are his partners, who's he growing with, all of this stuff, which obviously he had nothing to say to them about that. And so he just got the shit kicked out of him. And
hey, respect for taking that one for the team, or boy,
man, that's for sure.
So how long was he in the hospital for?
I don't know. I was hesitant, like, in going into all of these details with him. I was hesitant to ask too many specific questions.
Sure, it's probably traumatic for him as well,
Right. And after, dating and then marrying Shane, I learned, the more questions I ask, the more they feel like they're being interrogated.
Yeah, and
So
I certainly don't like people to feel like that, but like I do feel like, especially when it comes to like police brutality and that kind of shit, I like to get them stories aired out as much as possible.
Totally, slowly but surely, because once I was talking to my father about this, I could tell, we reached this point where he was really excited to have his story told, and excited to have me follow in his footsteps as being a cultivator. So I think more and more will come out. But I do know that he ended up in the hole for like 6 months.
Yeah, you said they put him in fucking solitary for that?
Yeah, he was in solitary multiple times, but I think the longest stint that he told me was 6 months. So I don't know if that was a result from this, altercation of him not wanting to talk and having the shit beat out of him. I'm sure he didn't take that laying down. And so anyway, so it was, it was this whole thing which then impacted his life with his family and his relationship to me. At this point, I had moved out to Maine with my stepfather and mom, but we had always stayed in contact because I am, I'm a spitting image of him. We have all the same mannerisms. So our relationship has always been very close forever. I've always just had good memories. And I remember him, I was told that he was, that he went to prison. And it was this serious thing, and I could tell, it was upsetting for family members. And I just remember feeling inside that I was like really proud. I just remember being like really proud of him and just knowing, it's like those of us that are in the, cannabis community at our age, we're used to it being federally illegal and to have it be this underground thing. And for a lot of us, that doesn't tend to, be a type of person that will just follow a rule blindly. We kind of have this, anarchy, it's somewhere in our heart.
It's an outlaw sort of mentality. That's how this whole industry was sort of. And someone like, look, I believe I told you, like my dad was arrested by the feds when I was 7. Like that was a defining part of my childhood, and that story is still like lives on in Vermont folklore legend somehow. So it's been wild to sort of catch up and now be on the other side of the equation here.
Yeah, it's really strange because we were really hesitant to apply for a social equity application.
Even though that seriously fits, I mean, that fits the absolute definition of the law.
Yeah,
as far as I've read it.
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely does. And so we were really hesitant, but I'm glad we did now because it's opened up a lot for me because, from the family that raised me, fantastic people. I'm super close with my stepfather, also my mother. I mean, my family's amazing. But I was very different from them in how I approached my life and always had my strong connection to, Rick, my bio dad. And, with him going to prison for aggravated assault, and cannabis and all this stuff that just like blew up, it wasn't at such a young age, it wasn't something to be proud of or to talk about, and
It didn't even register with me. I was so young. I was 7 when that shit happened, and I was just like, "Oh, there's dad and some cops on the TV." But like
yeah,
those were federal agents, and
yeah,
and
totally.
it took a couple decades for that information to catch up with my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. For some reason, like I just knew in my heart that it was something to be proud of, and I don't know why. But nonetheless, I still didn't. I'm just now processing a lot of that and what it means for our community, what it means for me, especially in following in his footsteps and in Shane's footsteps of being a cultivator, and being, a second, possibly a third generation cultivator. Because my great uncle also grew. I don't know much about him, but I know there's just talk in the family about that. And so I'm just now, really in the past like month, starting to think about this and talk to my father more about it. It's just a really interesting place in my life.
The hell of a backstory, yeah,
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
really
And so what? You guys got a tier 2? I usually throw that out, right? A tier 2 outdoor up
Yep.
there. Okay, cool. I usually try to do that off the top, but I got lost. Sometimes the 5-minute life story turns into half an hour, and I fucking love that.
yeah.
It's my favorite part, really. We could talk about weed all day, and we're going to right now. But I find it much more interesting to talk about the people because everybody can grow weed that I talk to. It's like
That's
it's
fair.
the interesting rivets in your life that make these conversations interesting, if you
Yep.
ask me. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you guys for sharing, by the way, and thank you for calling your dad. And if he'd like to come on for an interview, I would absolutely have him on.
Oh, wonderful. I'll talk to him about it. I bet
Yeah.
that would interest him, because I think this is a healing experience for him too at this
Yeah,
point.
and it certainly has been for me. I'm dealing with some of the same kind of shit that you've dealt with, and sort of unraveling my own personal trauma and maybe some of my family history. So
Totally.
yeah, it's been interesting. So let's talk about the weed, guys. Thank you for all that shit. I want to ask you how you sort of decided to start a weed company in Vermont, and I would like to ask you how you made your way through the application process.
Well, I'm gonna have to divert the application process to her, but how we came to decide to grow weed in Vermont. I mean, I absolutely love growing cannabis, like absolutely. It's one of those things that I have memories in my life of it being the most stressful thing I've ever done, it not working out amazing, it being amazing, all these things, and I still loved it the whole time. So I knew that I wanted to get, back in the business. We were doing it in Maine. And like the thing is, I wasn't giving up there, although it wasn't working. And being that I'm an 8th generation Vermonter, I was beyond thrilled that the market was opening up here. And it's also, full disclosure, part of being in recovery, like I'm done with the black market. I'm done with that aspect of my life that made me look over my shoulder because it's fucking stressful. And I was an outlaw for a very long time, and I don't regret a damn thing I've ever done. But that being said, I knew that I wanted to be in a regulated market. The medical market in Maine is, regardless of the outcome, it's still gray area to me. You know what I mean? So
It sure seems like that from what I've been reading too.
yeah. It's let's be real, it's fucking gray area. So getting the opportunity to be in Vermont, and I've been in Maine, had been in Maine for 3 years, and my dad is part of this business with us. He's a co-owner. And getting to move back to my family that I'd been away from for, forever, two decades. And so I think, being near family was the main driving force for it. I think that having a cannabis business, as Jesse mentioned, would be an easy way. There's where the naivety comes in. An easy way of getting our own home and being near family.
Yeah. That was the foundation for everything, is a sense of like security and prioritizing home and family. Showing up for family is really important to us. So
And I'm gonna just push back on you there because it doesn't seem like it's super easy. It seems like maybe growing the weed is easy once you're good at it, but starting a business, it seems, especially in a federally illegal sort of corporate landscape here, is still it seems very challenging.
Oh, it's extremely challenging.
Yeah.
That's why I had to throw up.
Yeah, right. You know, and you know, for all you lazy stoners, it seems like you fuckers work pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hands down the hardest thing I've done in sobriety. And I'm working on, and I just had 7 years last week. So hardest thing for sure, but worth it. You know, in the midst of all of this, it's like, you know, you have moments where you're like, what the fuck have we done? You know, and then you think about the alternative of being like, do I go back to, you know, my like a day job? And then it was like, fuck no, like no. You know, I also I love it. But it's also been hard because it's been such a grind for 2 years straight. There hasn't been a lot of time to even process any of it.
And from what I've seen, like, you know, I've met a number of other people, and it seems like there's a lot of couples, especially, that are involved in this business, and it does seem like it could take a toll on a relationship, man. You know, and certainly I'm just doing the journalism, and my girlfriend's already like, yeah, are we gonna hang out ever? You know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh my gosh, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we knew we were ready to get married. I mean, we really knew within the first like 3 to 6 months.
looked like a lovely ceremony, by the way, too. I saw some pictures.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks to family. Family's incredible. But yeah, I mean, it set the foundation for our marriage 100%. Because it is so difficult to merge just different working styles, and then being around each other all the time under immense stress, especially because everything is bootlegged. So it's like you borrow this money, you dive in, and you have got to make it work.
You guys are bootstrapping the whole thing.
Yeah. You know,
Cool.
there's nothing. It's thanks to his father, who hopefully he'll hop on an interview with us at some point.
Sure.
But he's amazing. He was the first one to believe in us and just, you know, helped us fund it in Maine and then in Vermont, and just works his ass off with us. He just dove in, initiation by fire.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's certainly the one that showed me what a work ethic is.
It must be nice to have that kind of support from your family, man.
It's fucking amazing. And that's, I mean, I'm beyond lucky for sure. There's also the fact that I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky to, you know, I put in so much fucking work, blood, sweat, and tears in the market way before it was able to be interviewed about, you know, over a camera. So being able to do it with my dad, you know, is phenomenal.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is hilarious.
Like, what is going on here?
I got interviewed, I think, by Hetty Vermont briefly, just over the phone, and they asked, they were just getting a couple sound bites from me or whatever, just little quotes, and I was quoted in saying, like, they're like, how is it being in the regulated market? And I was like, oh, thank God, I've been a criminal my whole life basically, and now I'm not. But they accidentally quoted my father.
He was a school teacher,
and I just left it. I thought it was fucking hilarious.
Like, we're not changing this, because he was a teacher, woodshop teacher in Woodstock. So we're like, this is gold.
Hopefully some of his students read that and they're like, wait, what?
You're criminal your whole life?
But anyway, yeah.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. So how was the application process for you guys?
Gosh, I don't even remember it, Caleb. I'm like, when was that? What happened? I mean, it was incredibly difficult. It's really, but I mean, I say that with the caveat that I really respect the CCB, and I don't know if they really could have made it all that much easier given the resources that they have. You know, so I'm grateful for it being what it was, because I think it's a lot harder in other states. I was looking at the rec application adult use in Maine before we decided to do medical, and it looked a lot harder than this process.
Sure.
But it was really hard. I think it was easier for me than the average person. One, because I'm really detail oriented, and I went to college, which just helped you prepare for it.
I did that too. Yeah. I don't remember a lot of it, but it did help me get ready for some kind of shit like that.
Yeah. I'm like not even sure exactly what it was, but it was something about like the way that you wire your brain to go through these kinds of things that it was helpful to me. And I also had a pretty serious jaw surgery in the midst of all the CCB meetings leading up to.
Were you guys following those closely?
Yeah, I was able to because of this jaw surgery. I was bandaged shut for like 9 months during the meeting. So I really had to take it easy. So I was able to go to all the meetings and like really focus on being able to do that versus the physical labor that I was used to doing with Shane. So that helped immensely because I was a part of that process. I helped shape some of the rules with public comment, so that made it a lot easier. But I mean, it's hard. It's a lot of work. There's just, this industry doesn't exist yet and it's federally illegal. So every decision you have to make, every move you have to make, it's another wormhole that you just, I just tumble into. I think I have one thing to do and it opens up to 5 different things, at every turn. It's insane. Be that with zoning or insurance, each little step, it was just its own kind of nightmare.
Do you guys own your own property out there?
So Dave owns his own property, Shane's father, our other partner, and we were about to close on a property in Springfield with this like gorgeous 4-season greenhouse. And oh my gosh, we put together like a business plan, all this stuff. We got approved by zoning. Springfield was really excited to have us. And then we had to walk away from the property for a few different reasons. And at the last hour. And what month was that?
Well, Springfield, that's like The Simpsons, right? Like that was
yeah. That was literally
was that March or something?
No, that was May, I think. It was like the end of May and we were about, or the middle of May maybe.
Oh dude, it was insane.
And we were about to move and go full bore. We were intending on doing a tier 2 mixed tier because it was like a massive 4-season greenhouse that we were going to use as the indoor facility. And then
which the CCB, I say this with humility, but I'm pretty sure the CCB specifically put in a mixed use tier 2 for us because I advocated so ridiculously for it because I think they only had a tier 1 at that point. I can't remember what it was, but the way they were doing it didn't open up the possibility of people being able to continue their grow through the winter and continue that income. And so anyways, we ended up not using it.
I watched it happen. They kept on pushing back against Jesse and being like, no. And Jesse kept being like, but yeah,
for these reasons,
the market
needs it.
And eventually when they okayed it, they're like, okay, well, we hope people can put this mixed tier 2 to use. And then the property fell through.
Oh god.
So, and there goes my dad, saving the day as well there. Because we had already, we were done. We were closed up shop in Maine. We were coming here. So, we got the opportunity to put the 312 plants in the ground in Brownsville, which worked out. It wasn't our plan, but I think that God provided for us. I think that it was like starting this business and all the aspects that come with it, the branding, the marketing, the paperwork, all the things, the cultivation of it, the building out the grow. I think that we were biting off more than we could chew.
I think we would have been married. I mean, we would have approached it differently. But even still, just the 312 plants, because it's just us. It's us 3,
Right. It's a lot to do. You got to be out there every day. Like
exactly, and then one of our MVPs is like amazing. So there's well,
and we had help from my cousin Steve helped for a huge portion of the first half as well. So it's been like but overall it's us.
Yeah. So it's insane.
Which must be a crunch come fucking trimming time,
Crunch at every turn.
Yeah.
Every turn.
Yeah, making our own pre-rolls. It's all being hand trimmed. It's, I think we absolutely had different ideas of how this was going to happen and like when we were going to have product to market and when, and like so many things happen that
you can't possibly anticipate the direction things are going to take, what bottlenecks you're going to hit, what obstacles. I mean, I anticipated some of them, of course, but like I said, then that one obstacle or one bottleneck opens up to 5 others that you didn't consider.
Right. So like, how about the packaging? Have you guys had any issues with the packaging?
I mean, yes and no. That one, it wasn't too bad, I don't think. But now it's just a matter of what's sustainable long term. With glass, a lot of it breaks in shipping, and there's a lot of
plastic. A lot of it breaks. Yo,
yeah. So then you deal with that, and then there's a lot of plastic. If it's like doesn't break, it means it has way too much plastic inside of it to keep it from breaking.
Right. I've seen glass jars that are individually bubble wrapped inside.
Right, exactly. Luckily, ours weren't like that, but at the same time, then we ended up with a bunch of broken glass, and we had to get rid of those entire boxes or set them aside, really, is what I've done right now, because otherwise we have to make sure there's no shard anywhere. You can't. So I'll deal with that for our own personal use or something, So that was probably the biggest one, I think, with packaging so far, but we'll see, because it's trial and error. We got to see how stable is the shelf life with the ones we got, and just things that we won't know until it goes to market, and it's just so expensive, of course.
Who did your logo and your labeling and stuff?
Oh, 49 Design up in Burlington. They
not Canna Planners. Wow, you guys are like the first one. How about you?
No, what's silly is when I was researching who to use and like Googling, trying to figure stuff out, Canna Planners, it never popped up for me. And then within like a month, all of a sudden Canna Planners they were everywhere. I was like, how the fuck did I miss that? But
yeah, we had already dove in with 49 when we even discovered Canna Planners.
So I guess it was just meant to be that way, but they were amazing. Who is it? Mike, Nick, and Steve over there. They're so great to work. They're so patient.
Some local guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. I'd love to chat with them. Yeah, hey. I love to talk to those marketers and people that do kind of, I've only had Will on from Canna Planners. I like Will a lot, but I've also been wondering, like, if there's any competition out there. I know there's a few other people that are involved in the game, and I'm trying to reach them.
Oh, yeah. They're great over at 49. We really enjoyed working with them.
Yeah, it looks nice. I think I saw some pictures of your packaging here. It looks pretty nice.
Yeah,
they were phenomenal, and they were patient as all hell. I mean, I full disclosure, we had made up our mind, and they were finishing our logo, and we were like, actually,
it's not ours.
That's not our logo. We need to start over. And they had been doing, like, following our direction the whole time, and then we're like, wait, wrong direction, and they we're like, that's fine, and took it exactly. Like, I'm thrilled with what they've done with the logo, the packaging, and I think you'd have a great conversation with I think Mike. He was a professional skier, and I think he owned Orage clothing, and helped with that whole thing. So he's done marketing for many things, and that's you can have the conversation with him. Cool. But I think you guys have a good talk.
Yeah. I mean, it looks slick, man, and I know that's certainly been like, a challenge for a lot of people is finding compliant packaging and making sure you can fit all the shit on the labels.
Yeah.
It's a lot of shit they make you put on there.
Yeah.
It really is, and it's worked out decently. I haven't tried yet. I don't have a manufacturing permit, but I don't know how they're going to put it on grams of concentrate once that becomes legal.
Right, dude, which is why I feel like I see a lot of these concentrates being overpackaged, where they'll take a gram thing and then put it inside of a giant box just so you can fit. Yeah, and I personally, I try to keep my personal feelings out of the interviews, but I think that's super fucking wasteful, and there's no need for it.
It negates the whole, they're trying not to have plastic waste, and they're trying not to have much waste in general, and it kind of negates that. And, I would assume these problems will, solve themselves over time.
I think so.
They're not going to get it perfectly at first, but
I think a lot of these things, it's just going to take trying things on for size and seeing what issues we have as a result of them.
How do you feel about the warning labels? Have you read them all?
Yeah. It's been a while, but I remember.
No, I haven't.
I remember when they were writing them in the during the meetings. And, you know, it's excessive, you know. I understand the need to try to cover your ass when something's federally illegal, especially. But we know who the specialists are. We know because we've been involved with cannabis for so long and recognize the health benefits and the lack of what is the word I'm looking for? Negative effects. But
nobody's dying. So.
You know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I usually get where other people are coming from on that. So I just get that they just want to be protected, but it's very clearly excessive.
Yeah, but like in terms of putting those protections onto a label and then getting them onto your actual product, it seems like, especially with the concentrates, that's going to be weird. If you have a little gram concentrate jar, where are all those warnings going?
Yeah, totally. And there's got to be, I mean, maybe they'll allow people to do a QR code to the warnings also. Who knows? But we should all be thinking about it because we can really help shape these rules. Like the CCB listens. Like I felt very empowered during when I was sitting in on all these meetings and giving feedback. It like I saw a change happen as a result of the feedback I gave.
Oh, that's great.
I watched that happen.
Yeah, it's very empowering.
I watched that happen, and as somebody that's afraid of cameras, and doesn't usually like, I was not doing that, but like realistically, the voice of this industry belongs to me and to her and to the other growers. The fact is, a bunch of us legacy growers aren't going to get up there and start fucking looking at a camera and answering questions or asking questions. A lot are, but I didn't. You know, and you know, I catch myself complaining about regulation and things these days that I never said a damn thing about. You know, and I did watch policy get changed.
By the end, you started to, because he was realizing that change was happening by the result of my feedback. So then he'd be in the background and
fucking
you know, and so then by the end he did pop on a couple of times and, you know, said some things. And I think that's really important for us all to like
we are at a strange crossroads here where for sure, like I remember when I interviewed my dude at Foreman's like way back in April or May maybe, and he said the same shit. He's like, you know, for like the last fucking 20 years I've been doing this thing that I'm just not allowed to talk about with anyone, and I'm not like sure who I can talk to about it. And it was awesome, you know, like and I know it's a weird you know, it's a weird spot for people like you, I imagine, you know, sort of coming out of the closet here.
Well, it is a weird spot. It is a weird spot because it was for a very serious reason why it was not talked about. It was my like freedom and like my, you know what I mean, was contingent on the fact that I keep my mouth shut, which is something that it, you know, you just literally, it's ingrained inside of me at this point. So when I'm at the local, the Brownsville Butcher and Pantry, for example, where we go get our food that's right down the street, and I reek of weed, and, you know, someone brings it up, I get nervous at first. And like, you know, it was one of those things that like, you know, I grew weed for a very long time, and my parents, I would assume, would be a little embarrassed when people be like, oh, what does your son do for a living? You know what I mean? And I don't know how they would answer it, but now I can say what I do. And some of the reactions I get blow my fucking mind. It's like all of a sudden normal. And I'm like, okay, so where was I in this crossroads of it being shady and now it's normal? Because something happened in the middle and I wasn't paying it.
Yeah, right. It's like, dude, I grew up without internet. I remember those days where I grew up without internet, and then we had internet all of a sudden, and it was amazing. And so I imagine, yeah, it's like, oh, we was illegal the whole time, and now it's not illegal. Although, you know, I still feel like some of the DUI laws are kind of crazy. Personally, I thought that stuff was really overkill, even though they really don't have a judgment to determine like when people are impaired for cannabis, you know, and they're going to try to use maybe the same standards as they use for alcohol, which is something that personally bothers me a lot, and I don't think is a fair comparison.
No, I think we're all floundering right now. You know, it's like you start this like, we're just right. I mean, everyone's been working towards this for so long, but as far as it coming into law, it's just going to take some time. But I really think that if any state has a chance to get it right, it's Vermont. Like, I really believe that. It's like a really tight-knit community, really great culture. And it's known for this craft, you know. So I think that a lot of these things will be able to change in due time.
I hope you're right about that.
A lot of it's bullshit right now. I mean, that's for sure. But so it goes. Like, we've been bullshitted for the better part of a century about this. So
yeah, it would be wild to expect that to just change overnight.
Right.
Great point there. Look, I want to nerd out maybe a little here. I sorry to totally switch directions, but I realize I've had you here for an hour. I had a feeling we might chat for a minute.
Has it been an hour?
Yeah, well, we got almost an hour there, and I always open up 2 hours just in case people are chatty. So I would like to talk to you sort of about maybe where you're getting your genetics, maybe about building your soils out there. I'd like to nerd out maybe on some growing science, if that's an option.
Oh yeah, of course.
Let's talk soil.
I mean, genetics, that's a wide variation of, you know, friends that have been in the industry for a long time, passing down genetics, and the advent of it being a totally normal thing, and you can purchase seeds on the internet. I am addicted to it. I love the pheno hunt. I absolutely do. I just, you know, even when I don't need to, I do more. As I'm sure.
So much pheno hunting.
So, you know, I've had good genetics that have been handed down to friends through different, you know, markets. Beautiful Sunday brunch from Woodstock Pharmacy over in Maine, which is phenomenal. Phenomenal watermelon kush that's old school, various things. And then, you know, doing pheno hunt on some in-house genetics packs, which has been very fruitful. To be
in-house genetics. Wait, I think I follow those guys.
Yeah. They're solid, realistically. I mean, like they certainly breed a lot of new hype things, but I tell you what, man, I've more often bought their packs of seeds and had to choose between multiple keepers in one pack of seeds, and that doesn't fucking happen.
And I know they got like a nice little podcast that he does too, I believe. I don't remember that guy's name, but yeah, they got a little podcast going. Yeah, I like those guys.
Yeah, but so genetics, that'll always keep growing. I am currently shopping for more, and I don't, you know, that's not necessary, but that's just a little addiction of mine.
I'm like, what are you doing?
It's like buying extra ammo. You just never know when you're gonna need
so much.
Dude, thank you. I'm using that. I am using that. And in terms of you know, we're very lucky. The property that we grew on this year, so it was a cow farm for the greater part of 150 years. It hasn't been in some time. But the house was built in the late 1700s. And it's up on a mountaintop. The soil is phenomenal. That being said, you know, your growing methods will dictate whether or not it stays that way. And I think that, you know, part of the method that, you know, I've utilized for a long time, we utilize together, you know, using the soil food web and, you know, trying to continue the symbiotic relationship that's already happening in soil. It allows you to be a steward of the land and, like, you know, allows you to let the plant dictate what it is it's taking out of that soil.
It sounds like you kind of got a beautiful spot and maybe lucked out a little bit, huh? On having some nice lands, bro.
Yeah, because how we approach, because we're still hoping to get our own place every day. We hope we want to close on a place ASAP, so we're gonna have to rebuild our grow again. But the fact that this opportunity was here for us and we were able to get to market with a great product and have great soil is such a blessing. I mean, we wouldn't have done it had we tested the soil and it didn't test well. Because
you got soil samples and had that shit checked out.
Oh yeah.
How about water samples? Did you do any water samples?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Cool. I bet you got a nice water source up there too if you're up on a hill. Yeah.
I mean, Vermont's the best.
Yeah, we didn't use hardly any water. We used rainwater. There's a massive barn on the property, and we had rainwater collection.
Nice.
With a couple 1,000-gallon tanks. I could count on one hand the amount of times we used water from the well. Now,
so you're feeding your plants with rainwater collection from your barn.
Yes.
Awesome.
For sure.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And those systems, I believe, you know, my friend built one of those super cheap at his house. With the big plastic buckets. I mean, it takes a little maintenance, but it seems like a really a cheap way to, you know, harvest your own is that the right word? Harvest your own water, or
I'd say,
have
yeah.
your own water supply, like your own reservoir, basically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, like, the tanks cost money. Everything costs a little bit of money, but like realistically, like, the priceless part about it is the tanks filling up on their own. And you know what I mean? And like, it's just, and it's also part, realistically speaking, if we're going to be, doing this grow method that utilizes what nature does on its own, not collecting rainwater and applying that as the watering source, kind of,
Because that's our whole gig with, Old Growth Vermont, or originally in Maine, it was Old Growth Organics, is a playoff of Old Growth Forests, and this symbiotic relationship between all living things in its environment. So that's really our play and what we're really trying to work towards. And I mean, that's the part that we love, that goes back to the reason why we started this, is wanting something of our own to value, to feel secure with, but also to be able to take care of that and be a steward of it, to feel like, we're in a relationship with our land.
And getting your own water seems like a great place to start.
Right. It's all of that, taking care of the soil, and, just knowing what animals are on the property,
Do you guys have some animals? You guys some livestock, or do you have like a lot of
not yet, but we will once we have
you got a lot of visitors?
Who did
we have lots of visitors. I mean, there's livestock on the property. My father's friend from down the street has cows, who was my neighbor's farm growing up, where I, they got me tossing hay bales when I was big enough to pick one up, so he has livestock. But aside from that, I mean, like, there's all sorts of critters running around there, for sure. I mean, we got cameras all over the grow site.
My favorite were the raccoons, because they were two fatty raccoons that traveled together and just did a very specific lap around and like through our gate every night for a few weeks. They were my favorite.
But they don't fuck with your plants?
No, nothing fucked with the plants. Yeah.
Thank goodness, because then you got to get creative about how how we would handle it. But we didn't have to do that this year, because
I hate that.
You don't want to obviously just like, our first instinct isn't to, well, maybe our first instinct is to kill it, but it's not our first move. You got to figure out like what they need, why they're around, and all that,
Well, that's nice of you.
Well, we really are trying to like figure out, like, it'll be easier once we're on our own property and staying there, but figuring out the role of each living thing all the way down to the microbiology of the soil.
Well, and like there is a solution, and I have experience something along this was in California, but my farm in California, the most plants that I ever got annihilated by wildlife was from rabbits. And what they were doing is they were coming in and chewing a circle around the stalk, and within 24 hours the plants were dead. Now these would be 15-foot tall, like it doesn't rain there, massive trees. So I at the time didn't know what to do, so I was killing the rabbits, right? So and I had to kill a bunch of them, and they're hard to kill, and there's shitloads of them.
They scream.
And enough. They do scream.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so eventually you got to break down like what is it they're doing? They're just chewing, they're sucking the water out of the plants. So I stared, I built the fence up more, and then I started putting bowls of water up around outside, and the problem was solved. And it's at the time, like, you freak out because it's your cash crop and you're putting everything.
That's way easier than shooting fucking rabbits.
Very true. And it's, but like I had, and it was me and my buddy Phil, who was running the place with me at the time. We were brainstorming on, well, what is it that's happening? It's like, there is no water there. It is drier than fuck. We are watering these plants every day, and they are thriving out of a living soil ecosystem. They're, they are the oasis. You know what I mean? So like, and it's different here for sure. But that being said, there's usually something that you can do to counteract. Mm-hmm. Not always,
Well,
definitely not always.
It is always, but it's just a matter of, do you have enough time?
Yeah, true.
And like, how much can you sacrifice? And that's a big thing with like, the kind of vision that we have with this. organic grow method and being a steward of the land and being sustainable is like something I really hope that consumers recognize, is that it takes time, because we're poor. Like we've put everything into this, like mind, body, soul, finances, and sometimes we can't make the sacrifice yet, so it's like working towards the things that we're going after and trying to be in line with our values, but like it's progress, not perfection.
Mm-hmm. Well stated. Damn. Hell yeah. That's why I was hoping we could nerd out on some of that for a while.
Yes,
How do you think it's going? How was your first season here?
It was phenomenal.
It's so hard.
It was
phenomenal.
Phenomenally difficult. And it's, the cannabis is phenomenal. There, I certainly am very excited about that. But it was tricky, I've always grown with built living soils in either raised beds or large pots, because although my growing experience is mostly in California. I was on trim crews and did harvesting in New Mexico and Colorado and various other places, but my growing experience was in California, and the soil there, isn't necessarily phenomenal. Now, utilizing compost teas and extracts, you can rebuild the soil for sure. But, when you're renting a property, it was always easier to do pots. So this year, we wouldn't have had enough time, because the one property fell through. And then we had to move right onto my dad's property. So we were lucky that the soil was phenomenal, but I had never grown right in the ground ever in my life. And I've been growing for a very long time. So, it was a learning curve. Yeah, like there was certainly things that happened that I was not prepared for. That being said,
such as, do you care to name any of those things?
Oh, not a problem at all. Yeah, I mean, we had there was root aphids for a little bit in just the grass, not so in the field in general. I had plucked a piece of grass out and was almost enveloped in and consumed with how to handle them, when in reality they were in the grass everywhere. And I think, come to find out, they weren't even messing with the cannabis roots at all. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
They'll chew at the roots of a plant, a root aphid.
So a root aphid will chew at the roots of the plant, right? And I've never dealt with them before at all, let alone like in a field. And they were already on the grass, the alfalfa, that was everything in the field. I got consumed by that. Little things with like
trying to figure out like if a plant needed more water.
I was just about to say that.
The biggest one, I think, that was like trying to just figure out like how much they needed, because with a pot, we stick our hand down the side and like we have control over its little micro environment. And so that was, just a learning curve.
Well, and more so because also, like, let's be real, when I'm building a soil in a pot or a raised bed, I have kind of control over the percentage of aeration I put in it. I'm helping to build, the aggregates that make it one whole living ecosystem. And this place, although the soil is phenomenal, was a cow farm for 150 years. So there's a certain amount of compaction that comes with having livestock. So like things like that, although it isn't the hardest thing in the world, when you're also building a massive perimeter fence, you're planting them right. As you're getting your permit. As you're getting your permit, you're moving. It's like all these things
you're prepared for a wedding.
So yeah, like just everything at once, I think, was
it like all worked out so wonderfully, and the plants were so they turned out so well, but under such immense pressure with a new grow method, or like what we were growing in, it was just a lot to process and not lose your cool. It's really more about us like learning not to lose our cool more than actually anything being a major issue.
But like, don't panic.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also, a big learning thing for her was probably that I'm gonna lose my cool every once in a while, and it doesn't necessarily mean that shit's actually fucked.
It's like that big one for me. And that goes to like just partners working together, is like getting to know each other on that. Like,
so does she balance you out?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, we are the ultimate yin.
We're
and
polar
yang.
opposites. Like I just fucking wing it and I make it happen. And she plans shit out and then executes. And I execute and then figure it out later.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. Yeah, that made a lot of sense to me right there. Sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of like I keep getting sidetracked, but like the growing method, essentially adding biology to the soil so that the plant itself, within the symbiotic relationship via the microorganisms in the soil, the fungi, the bacteria and whatnot, it can control its own nutrient uptake and nutrient cycling. And we do this via the application of compost teas, compost extracts. I don't mess with KNF. I would love to. I have massive respect for, geeking out with Riley, Jesselyn's son, talking to him about KNF and some other friends. I'm very interested in it, but that wasn't the way I was shown how to grow.
Eduardo Jaime from Fine Bud Farms,
yes,
the guy I talked to a lot about that.
Yes. Yeah. He we had spoken at the event at his property.
Yeah, super nice guy.
About geeking out in the future on microorganisms, and we intend on it. But at the moment, applying the proper biology so that the soil and the rhizosphere and the mycelial network is all working, in cooperation with the plant and whatnot. I do add dry amendments, things of that nature, fish bone meal, worm castings, gypsum, various other things and they all have their own purpose. A lot of them are their microbe foods for sure. A lot of them, control different fungal things. But overall, that mostly helps with, or not mostly, but it helps with, the amount that is grown. The amount.
I heard the worm castings are great. That's something I haven't asked a lot of people about, but I know a lot of people that are using them and said they've had great results using those.
Yeah, worm castings are great for sure. I use a plethora of different things, to help build different resistances to pests and disease and whatnot.
What are the worm castings specifically used for? If there was one specific use, you would have to say.
I'd say worm castings is probably one of those things that you can't nail down a specific thing, because a worm casting, like, depending on the grade and what was fed to the worms, like it is compost. Now it's a different type of thing than like a thermodynamic compost or anything like that, but it is getting composted through the worm's digestive system. And so there are living microorganisms inside of the worm castings. Now, so they also do give a large boost of nitrogen. If you were to like ask somebody, like, what is this used for? Yes, you use this during veg. It will boost the nitrogen and it'll make those fuckers, beef up. But there's a lot more going on to it than that. As long as they were made and they had the proper food that went into them, then it's like a living, thing. There is the proper balance, if done correctly, of fungi, bacteria, nematodes, protozoa inside of the worm castings that, add this biology to the soil. And that's why you can make a compost tea if you want with just worm castings. I tend to search for different biocomplete compost to also use. And once we have our own property, I intend on making those myself. But you can do a lot with worm castings.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. I've always been curious about that. I'm like, yeah, worm shit seems like a cheap solution.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so essentially, just like working in tandem with the environment. I've done projects before where all I did was compost teas, things of that nature, because the fact of the matter is in the soil, even in sand, there's enough nutrients locked up in sand to feed to a plant. But how do you break down that sand? So you can feed plants with just compost teas and compost extracts. That being said, cannabis is a powerhouse and pulls a massive amount of nutrients. So that's where come in my dry amendments and things of that nature. You can absolutely grow a phenomenal product with compost teas and extracts alone. That being said, from my experience with cannabis, they produce a lot more with the added dry amendments and things of that nature. But in terms of quality, I always just loved the terpene expression and the trichome expression used with growing with living soil methods, whether it be using the soil food web method, the Dr. Elaine Ingham school of thought, which is the lane we're in, or I've seen immensely beautiful and clean cannabis grown with KNF methods too.
Sure, or indoor, you know, like, and I've seen nice weed growing with every method under the sun, and I really, you know, I can't
Very
grow
good.
fucking anything, so I'm in no position to criticize anybody who can make weed happen.
Well, I feel like criticizing too, as soon as you're unteachable, like, because I mean, I've been growing for a long time and that doesn't mean anything. Like, I can learn something from every grower I talk to, even if they grow with salts, they might have a trick, you know, that doesn't have to do with feeding the plants that I don't know about, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's what I really love about Shane just in general is his humility, but especially from what I've seen in the cannabis industry and especially in Maine, there's just like there's a lot of arrogance that comes in this. And I think that's, you know, a lot of it's like the black market culture of like having to survive in front and like get your product out there and all these things that just come with black market culture that have come into the regulated market naturally. And Shane just grows some of the best product that I've seen, but you wouldn't know it in talking to him a lot of times. Like he's
Well,
not.
those are my favorite guys, is the people that just shut the fuck up and grow the weed. I think
Yeah.
is
And
a
he'll
lot
just
of
like let
people.
people talk in front, and I'm like thinking in
What?
my head, I like almost want to like, you know, posture for him, and he
Yeah, but
like
that's an interesting
doesn't.
point you make about that sort of black market mentality. And yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment. You know, there was like, you always had to be the best at blah blah blah. You got to fucking be out there, like,
Yeah,
which is wild in an illegal industry, because you have to like kind of push your product, but also keep it quiet at the
yeah,
same time. So yeah, interesting dynamic there. Yeah, great point there. Hmm. You've given me a lot to think about here.
yeah. We're so glad.
Yeah. Can I ask you this? Where can we find some of your products?
So we are actually, we up until now, we have only distributed a few pounds wholesale, just to a couple of the local markets.
Just have a good faith to be like, hey, thanks for, you know, waiting for us to get through all the bottlenecks.
And as of Wednesday, we'll be dropping off at Sunday Drive in Woodstock, who is our local dispensary. Essentially, I went to Woodstock High School. I got shooed out of Woodstock essentially by the authorities for selling cannabis. Some 20
Say hi to
something.
Jamie if you see her down there.
Yeah, we'll do. And
She's a
you know,
sweetheart.
also the Tea House in White River Junction, and I believe we were talking to somewhere on the mountain, a Mountain Girl Cannabis as
Oh,
well. Once, so we
somewhere on the mountain. Hang on.
Yeah,
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 there you go. Yeah, we
yeah.
had a great conversation with them this morning.
Those
Yeah,
guys are fucking
They
wonderful.
seem fucking
yeah,
phenomenal.
we really enjoyed talking with them. They seem very down to earth and just trying to be really deliberate in how they approach the market, which we really appreciate because we've been trying to have these conversations for many months now with cultivators and retailers alike of being like, listen, like the market, like we set the market, like if we can work together, you know, and
Absolutely.
I feel like some of that has gone
That
out the
was a
window.
big if too. I'm glad you added in that if, because that is a big if.
Yeah,
If we
yeah,
work
you know,
together,
and
especially in a small state like this. It seems like cooperation is going to be necessary.
right, and just a lot of talking, you know, a lot of like working through things, some uncomfortable things, especially when none of us are at our best in the industry. We're all fucking smoked. You know, we've been grinding for so long, so it's like our ability, our capacity for confrontation and all of that, it's really difficult. It's
Hmm.
got to be for everyone.
Another great point there. Yeah.
You know, but like we've got to push through and like have conversations and be forthright and try to swallow our pride and all of these things, you know, if we're going to survive and if we want the market to be you know, fall in line with the culture that we all love about Vermont. And anyways, we just had a conversation with Somewhere on the Mountain. Like I really got that vibe from them. I really feel like they're willing to like take a hit when they need to and like just do what's right for the market. So we'll see.
I also got that same vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so we're hopeful. We've talked to multiple other retailers, but because I ordered a limited amount of labels initially, we'll wait for our mass amount coming in like a week, and we're just going to do a few drops right now of the people that we've been talking to the longest.
Cool.
out of
Yeah,
good
that
faith.
Sunday Drive is a nice spot. I was down there visiting a few weeks ago. I didn't know you guys were right down there. I would have stopped by. Yeah, that's probably my fault. But yeah, I stopped by to see their store.
Yeah,
I
we'll
grabbed
catch
a
you
little
next time around.
Corbin's joint or something.
Yeah, I mean, we love the ladies over there. They've been
They're
That's a nice
so
spot.
they're so fucking great.
yeah, they've been
I love
really
them.
they've been really great. We've talked to them for quite a while now.
PJ,
With the
I
course.
believe I met PJ at that same event where
Oh
we
yeah,
met in Washington, like real quick.
Yep.
yeah, she's really been cool.
Yeah, and we did the bud tending course there with Jessalyn as well. So we've kind of
Just to be informed about what bud tenders were learning and what was
Oh, you
being.
don't even have a dispensary. You guys just did that on your own, huh?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're, I don't know, like the community is also a massive part of this for us as well. So like, I even, regardless of the things that we took away from that, or certificate, whatever, but being that we were able to sit there and learn, with one of the local dispensaries that we're going to be distributing our product to about the, you know what I mean? Like that was wholly beneficial.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that's like an 8-hour training, huh? That's like a day-long class.
Yeah, it was long. But Jessie Lynn and her son Riley did such a good job, so it made it manageable.
Cool.
Yeah, it was definitely 4 hours longer than my attention span, but they did a fantastic job. And I love Riley and Jessalyn. Those two are great. So I mean, I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, they were fun.
Maybe we could break it up into a 2-part series for the limited attention span people.
Right.
Cool. Well, hey guys, I've reached the end of my list here. I want to first of all say thank you for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation. But if there's anything we missed, I know we didn't get into the banking or insurance too much, which I didn't really care about because the rest of this was way more fascinating. But if there's anything we missed, any shout outs you want to send, thank you again, both of you guys, Jesse and Shane, Old Growth, Vermont. Anything we missed, though, this is all you. I always leave the last word for my guests. Thank you guys so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and I guess for shout outs are our family that have just supported us through all of this when we've just been doggy paddling and like jumped off the deep end together. My family and his family have just really just showed up for us. And Brian Enos, our seasonal worker, has like been incredible. So definitely a huge shout out to him. And then just to everyone in the cannabis community that is doing this, just to remember that you're not alone. We're all in this together. And, just to remember to really try and work together so that we can make this market what we want through working together. So.
Yep. I think that's wrapped up nicely. The only thing I was going to say is shout out to my family, and her family as well. Same, my Uncle Pat, my cousin Steve, people that have jumped on board and just believed in this journey and just dove in, without, because like, I know that this is worth it. I've been doing this my whole adult life. But like to have other people that aren't a part of this, her family, my family members that have nothing to do with the cannabis industry inherently, to dive full in and support us in this and believe in us. So so that's where I'll leave it. And thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to, verbal vomit. And I
hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man.
Guys, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, my man.
Take care, man.